Good morning, everybody.
Morning,
Good
Doug.
morning.
Hello.
Did everybody have a good weekend?
Splendid one.
That's great.
Hey, Doug.
Sure.
If you want to get me out of the way early, testing a screen share to see if my feed up to show properly, I can do it right this second.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Wait a minute.
Yeah, am I set to share?
Mhm. Try it. Do you see the screen share button?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I would ask you, do you see the semblance of a PowerPoint on your screen?
Yes, we do.
I will now start it from the beginning to see if you still see it.
Yep,
Looking
Okay,
good.
looks great.
we're good to go. I will crash out, stop my sharing, and I will speak when spoken to.
And I am ready too, if you want me to go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. So there is the deck.
Got it?
And is that just the regular slide? Is everything okay?
Yes, it is.
Clap, clap. I could hit
All
my little
right.
reaction button for you. There we go.
Oh, look at that. Wow. I'm not used to using the reaction buttons, I have to say.
Wait, where's the reaction button? Oh,
Right down there.
I didn't know that was there
You
either.
can put like clapping, or it was Kyle's birthday yesterday, so you can.
Or other things, yes. Now, I don't trust that you can even go to the extent of letting people tell you to go faster or go slower. I don't want that.
How long do they stay up there?
Just, I think 5 seconds. It'll.
Okay. All right.
fade out.
I was going to say, I did a wow face, but then I thought, oh, that'll be bad throughout the entire
It's
presentation.
there forever.
Mhm.
Well, we're all just wowed. So
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Employment law. Gotta love it. Or not.
Well,
Yeah, well,
no, you said it right, Courtney. You gotta love it.
You gotta love
There's not really a choice.
So I had to laugh the other day. I got my new 2021 employment poster for Colorado. So it's got all the federal laws and and it's quite large actually. And so I put it on the back of my office door, and my dog, who's about 3 years old and kind of skittish, came in and was fine and everything was fine. And he turned around and he saw it and he started growling at the poster. And then he ran out of the room and wouldn't come back in. And I thought, that's what business owners do. I mean, that's exactly what happens. They start looking at the employment law and they completely lose it.
good story.
That's hilarious.
So I might have to share that story.
Yeah, that I think for sure. What kind of dog?
He is a chocolate lab Shar-Pei.
Oh,
Ooh,
Now
and he's a
that's
rescue.
an interesting mix.
It is an interesting mix. It is. And the older he gets, the more wrinkly his head gets, which is really
Cute.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's gorgeous.
He's absolutely wonderful. He has fear aggression, so we have to be really careful. We've got to muzzle him when we take him out, and
Oh
you know,
dear.
he has tranquilizers that we have to give him when we go to the vet, and it's really
Aw.
exciting. You know, I've never had a dog like that, but he was obviously just really badly abused before we got him.
Aw.
So it's nice
Too bad. Yeah.
to be able to give him a safe home.
Hey, Amanda.
Good morning,
Hi.
Amanda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Doug, I just shared this event on our Cave and the Colorado Grape Growers Facebook groups just now.
Oh, great. Thank you.
They all happen.
And I sent out a reminder yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that.
No, I was going to say, Courtney, it's been many years ago, but we frequently or used to have like every couple months an industry meeting and webinar where we'd talk about everything from winemaking to grape growing to liquor law. And we had at the time, director of liquor enforcement speaking, and she came in early and was sitting beside me listening to the winemaking chemists present.
Oh, mhm.
And after about half an hour, she leaned over to me and she said, "My God, I thought liquor law was boring." Like, oh yeah.
So I just want to make sure, because I think I'm up first, and I was not part of exactly how we were doing this. Doug, I have slides just to help. Are we able to share our screen? Is that going to work the best?
Yes, if you want to test that out, now would be a good time.
Sure. Let me do that.
I'll be back. Something else. I must test out pre-meeting. Be back shortly.
All right.
All right. Let's see, share. Let's make sure I've got the right thing.
That's looking good.
Cool. And just for full understanding as well, Courtney, I am just going through just so that you kind of have some awareness, and we'll see if this works through. So I'm just going through basically some of the new stuff for our people who might be, coming, and just some reminders talking about what the difference between quarantine and isolation is. I know some of this might be a review, but I want to make sure that people are cool with it. Talking about mental health right now being a priority, safety first. So then I talk about Colorado businesses, just kind of talking a little bit about that state certification program the companies need to be aware of, contact tracing, what that means, masks and safety, and ADA requirements, if you're not aware, might be there. Talking about what an outbreak looks like and when that might apply to your business. And then I leave with healthy families and kind of just talking about what is important. And then that is my entrance to you. Does that sound okay? Am I overlapping, or is this good addition to what you're providing for that?
Just with healthy families, that's the only overlap. And so really, if you go into that and cover it, maybe just in a general sense, and then say that I'll get into some of the salient details, Amanda, I think that we're fine on that.
Okay.
So go over comps 37, comps order number 37, the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, Colorado Whistleblower, sorry, great, my voice is going out already. Colorado Whistleblower Anti-Retaliation and the notice giving laws, those kinds of things, just briefly. State labor relations rules, Wage Protection Act, which is a lot of it is incorporated now into the Equal Pay Act.
I'll be right back.
What?
He just said he was going to return in a moment.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. And then the direct investigation rules, those last three I'm going to cover at a real high level.
Yeah.
Because they're mostly how the division's going to interact. And so, they don't necessarily need to know all the intimate details of that. So I'll go over those things. Obviously, the biggest ones are the comps order, the Equal Pay for Equal Work, and the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act. Those are the three biggies. So that's what I was going to hit.
No problem at all. I think then, and even the stuff that I was going to do on Healthy Families is just going to be like, I'm transitioning from general COVID, what you need to know as a human, what you need to know as a business owner, and then like what we should be thinking about for our employees and like their health and welfare. And then that's about what I was going to cover as far as very high level. So I don't know, depending on questions, if I'm going to fill a full hour or whatever, but I think you've got a lot of meat there. So if we can give you some time even, I think that's okay. It depends on the questions.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going to go. With mine, I've done this a couple of times now and for audiences, and it's been about a 35, 40-minute presentation and then questions. And so it just depends. And obviously, not being a lawyer, I'm going to be, I've got notes that I can refer to if somebody asks a question, I need to come back to it. But we're not getting into all the nitty gritty of everything because I think that would overwhelm them. I just think that giving them all that information would completely blow them away. And we don't need to do that. What we need to do is arm them with the information they need. And then I've got at the end, I've got kind of a checklist of here's some things you need to do. So
awesome. And then just for full notes, I am probably going to need to drop off after this. Just we've got a lot going on. It's busy times, Colorado legislation. So as long as that is okay, I think Courtney is here for more of those questions. And Mike, I know you had our area locked down. So I know that was kind of an ask initially, Doug, but hopefully that's okay.
No, that's fine. Can you stay through? So it's going to have questions for you and Amanda at 10:30, but do you want to answer questions right after your presentation and then drop off?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that because mine are going to be very more situational about business and COVID, so it'll be a little different. I think that's what I was thinking is I would do questions and answers right after mine. So I built some time for that.
Okay, good. All right, that's just fine.
Okay.
We still have people joining us.
Nice.
And it's not even 9 yet.
It's going to be fun and interactive.
Well, I really appreciate you guys doing this. Thank you.
Oh, happy to do it.
And we are recording this, making sure that's okay with everybody again.
You bet.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I had one person I've been corresponding with about some COVID questions. Last week, I mentioned this, and he's not able to attend, so he was hoping it would be.
Yep, and I had a couple calls from wineries over here. One I think is a nurse, and so she was joking that she felt it would be rude to be on a Zoom and then trying to. But she really wanted to say.
Oh, that's really nice.
And I was like, no, for sure.
That's funny.
All of your attention
so
to
that
your
I could
job and
move
to
around
the-
and not stuck on.
Yeah.
Let's find your glasses.
That is funny.
You have your new cards, right?
I appreciate that Doug is patiently waiting. It's been my experience through dozens and dozens of COVID Zooms that there is a COVID Zoom protocol. It's like church. That is, people are rushing in the last few minutes. They have to get the kids down to the Sunday school and the organ music is playing and like, you know, you just, yes. And then everybody gets seated after a few minutes.
That's a good point, because, you know, I've been on many Zoom meetings myself where I wait until the last possible minute and then my computer freezes up.
Oh, no.
We can't claim we're parking our cars. Okay, so that excuse goes away. Now, several of us are competing for sermon honors, so this ought to be interesting.
Well, let's give it just a couple more minutes.
Typically right before someone comes on a Zoom conference like this, their Zoom decides to update. So then they get stuck in the loop of waiting for that to happen.
Cassidy was very gracious and gave me a slot to present during VinCo. When was that? 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
And right in the middle of my presentation, my computer froze up.
Oh, no.
Couldn't get it to go forward, backward, anything. And then when I tried to reset that, I disconnected myself. Oh, well.
Everything. It all worked out.
That's right.
Cassidy covered brilliantly.
I think the key word for COVID times is grace at the moment, right? A lot of grace for a lot of things, mostly not in our control.
Yes.
True. Absolutely true. And although it seems like things are getting better, the clouds are beginning to clear, we're not in any more control than we were. I've realized that.
That's right.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? People will be coming in periodically. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining this webinar on labor issues, matters, and compliance. Hopefully gives you a chance to ask many of the questions that you have about hiring and labor and the new rules that have just started this year. I want to thank Cassidy Shull and Cave for co-sponsoring this, and I want to thank the Business Development Committee of the Colorado Wine Board, which included Candace Moore, Snowy Peaks Winery, and Kevin Weber of Carboy Winery. Standard Zoom procedures. If you would please keep yourself on mute until you've got a question you would like to ask. We're a small enough group today that I think, please just let us know when you do have a question. We will have a question period after each of the presenters, so you can save your questions up until that point, or if you need clarification on something, please just either raise your hand or put it in the chat screen at the bottom. Cassidy, what am I forgetting here?
I think that's it. We're just really excited to have such a big group today, and a big thank you to all of our speakers. And yeah, happy Monday.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending
Yeah.
your morning with us.
So let me do a quick introduction of our speakers, and I will let them present more of their credentials, because we are really honored and pleased to have three very renowned and outstanding speakers to join us to cover the topic today. First off, we have Amanda Erickson with HRX Services, which provides HR support for small businesses as a consulting firm, and also through, is it Larimer County, Amanda?
Yes, I mean, I partner with Mike Kohler all the time with
Okay.
Larimer County, but we're also connected with Weld County as well.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Well, since we mentioned him, Mike Kohler is with the Elevate training program for Larimer County. He comes highly recommended by Candace Moore. And then Courtney Berg is the founder of Courtside Consulting, which also works with small businesses, and is a trainer with the Colorado Small Business Development Center. Actually, I should also mention, Amanda is the state director of the Colorado Society for Human Resource Management. So Amanda, I think we're going to turn this over to you to start, and thank you so much to all of our speakers for joining us.
Thank you, Doug and team, for having us. I'm excited to be able to share with you some general information. Really, we're going to start with a lot of intention and kind of work our way toward more understanding, especially for employers. A couple of notes just from my end. Again, my name's Amanda. I'm one of the owners of HRX Services. We do provide a lot of HR consulting information to our clients and colleagues, and we love doing these types of training sessions just to get knowledge out there. One thing I am not is an attorney, so just keep in mind that anything that I'm sharing today is more general information, best practices, things that we've seen and learned through trying to support smaller organizations like yourselves. But just keep that in mind. If you're ever looking for like tax or legal advice, certainly look to your partners in those areas to support you with those types of questions. But we are happy to take a lot of questions today and hopefully be able to help answer some of those. May not know everything. There's a lot that's going on, but hopefully between the three of us, we'll really be able to give you some good information to take back. One other thing just to note is that I do have the chat box open. So you are welcome to come on camera or unmute yourself, and that'll be somewhat of a sign to me that you might have a question. But if I can't see you or I'm engaged in something else, please know that that is up and you're welcome to post something there and we can dive in. So today, to get us started, I'm really going to start with kind of that high level overview of what's happening with COVID today, what that looks like for Colorado in general. We'll then dive deeper into the levels of kind of areas that may be of importance to you as a small business owner in your area. So let's see if everything is working here. Woohoo, wonderful. So COVID-19 in Colorado today. I don't know how many of you were thinking, thank goodness 2020 is coming to an end and this is going to be the end of COVID. And then 2021 comes and all of us are a little bit like, like that Debbie Downer. It's still here. Right? We're still going through it. We're living through it. I think that we have developed some cadence with how to work through a pandemic, which was very new to us a year ago and less so now. So I think that there's a lot of good things that are coming from how we're building processes and responsible practices to make sure that business both thrives and also we're protecting our population and the public. So I'm going to cover a few things, just a little bit about the guidelines that are being used today, just to kind of talk high level about what's happening in the state of Colorado from that perspective. And then we'll talk a little bit more about COVID in general. Stats and reminders for everyone. So if you're a human living in Colorado, what does this mean for me? And then we'll kind of move into COVID for businesses and talk a little more about what should I be thinking of today. So again, that being said, that's kind of what I'm going to take us through. We'll have some time for questions and answers, but feel free to write them in the chat box. And if it's pertinent to what I'm talking about, I'll try to keep that in mind and work through that. So the first thing, as far as the status of COVID in Colorado, one thing would be helpful is if you do have the opportunity to, and in your chat box, you can certainly say yes or thumbs up or anything like that if you would like, but I'm just curious of how many people really know where to find this level determinants or are like watching this in Colorado. You're familiar with the Colorado website, where to find that information. So again, if you want to just chat in and say, yes, I'm familiar. No, I'm not familiar. Kind of news to me. I'm looking for that, or even a thumbs up if you can do that. Awesome. Seeing some good stuff here. Perfect. Seeing a lot of yeses. Excellent. Okay, so very good. That's wonderful news. So we're trying to figure out exactly what level we're in. I think most of the state at this moment in time is in that level orange. I think we do have one county when I looked at it this morning that is in the level blue. But one thing I did learn from Channel 7 News today, in case anyone else saw it, relatively new, that they are looking to move from 14 days to maybe 7 days of COVID cases to like manage and monitor in order to assess our risk level. So it looks like we're trying to be more pragmatic about what we're looking at and be able to allow our businesses to continue to thrive. They've also discussed looking at smaller positive percentages in smaller communities, and they have asked for public commentary on this. So if you are really following this and interested in providing your thoughts, let me know. I'm happy to send that link that I saw, or again, if you're on the website and taking a look at it, you're familiar with what this chart looks like, and you can also drill down into some of those counties. But just something to kind of understand where we are, what they're looking at, and they're really looking at whether we are prepared to support the need for people in hospitals in order to really identify what that capacity level looks like. So something just to keep in mind. Looks like most people are familiar, so that's great. So let's talk a little bit about, just making sure. Let's talk a little bit about those symptoms. So we've seen our symptoms continue to pretty much remain the same or grow. And so when we're talking about symptoms and severity, again, we're saying symptoms could appear anywhere between 2 and 14 days from exposure to the virus. People could have COVID-19, but that list of symptoms continues to be a little bit vague when we're thinking about that compared to, your common cold or allergies. I know that we've had a lot of people have allergy issues this year. We're getting into flu season, or already in it, I think, at this point. So there's a lot that we want to make sure that we're taking into consideration. But with some of the laws that Courtney is going to go over with you down the road, it's important to understand that a lot of these symptoms overlap with symptoms that could be common viruses and common illnesses, and it still might need to be tracked as a COVID-related need for leave in your organizations, mainly because they still fall into the category that is with COVID-19. So that's where it provides a little gray area in understanding, well, what is this? Is this COVID-19 related need for leave, or is it something else? And usually that's pretty hard to distinguish at this point in time. So just something to kind of keep in mind. Again, it can be a varying degree of illnesses and need for time away. Sometimes people are able to work from home, be remote, doing what they need to be doing. But if you're in a public facing type organization, that can be a little more limiting for you. And the need for leave might be a bigger lift for your particular organization. So again, I don't think I'm sharing anything that people don't quite understand. The one thing that we've had from a lot of our clients and questions about this is, I've been told to quarantine, or I need to isolate, or I have something in that space. What is the difference? And so I'm just highlighting that because I think it's important to understand that both really require and need to not be in the public. So again, having that quarantine, if you're being asked to quarantine, if you need to quarantine because of symptoms, someone who has tested positive for COVID and have now been asked to quarantine, those are quarantine related reasons. Once you're in that space where I've been infected with the virus and I need to be kept away from others, this now includes people in your own home. So again, just making sure that you are taking those precautions. I know it's hard. There's also precautions to stay away from pets. And trying to stay isolated. We also have a lot of people who've moved from working at their regular place or their home and have now moved back to family because they're working remote. So you may have people who are here for a period of time that don't normally live with you. But when we're seeing that, we have families now extending generations. So one thing to keep in mind is if you're in a situation where you do have someone in your home who needs to be isolated, we need to think further beyond that. Like, do I now have a grandparent in the home as well? And so I need to make sure that that person is being isolated from me. Am I making sure I'm isolated from them? So those are some of the things that we've seen transpire because of this from last year to this year, is a lot of people kind of switching where they're living at this moment in time. So something to keep in mind as you're kind of looking at it, or maybe have dealt with it in the past, that might be a little different or a little different from your employees today. Any questions about that difference? I know we've had a lot of people kind of ask about that. Okay, not seeing that at the moment. So one of the things that I would say is that we've seen there's this 10-day requirement and there's a 14-day requirement. The CDC still maintains that they think the 14 days is really important. They're trying to be as conservative as possible. But we have seen kind of it be okay that it's been 10 days since you were potentially going back and exposed, or 10 days without symptoms, you could go back to work. So I'll address that a little bit further, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that there still is, at least with the CDC, kind of this conservative approach that 14 days is still kind of what they're saying. And that's why you're going to see this here. This is from the CDC in particular. So one of the other things that we've seen a lot is the close contact information. What is a close contact? And who needs to quarantine? So when we're talking about close contact, we're really talking about people who have tested positive within the past 3 months. These are people that we know we've been in contact with, and that could be considered a close contact as long as we were within 6 feet of that person for a total of 15 minutes or more. You've also needed to maybe provide care for that person at home, or you've had direct physical contact with this person, they're a close person to you, and now you could potentially be exposed. Eating and drinking utensils, sneeze, coughed, or really even talking at a long distance. I've seen that happen. So I know that there's been some dialogue around, well, it could be less than 6 feet if you had a longer timeline that you were in the room with that person. But for what we know so far, the CDC is still really maintaining this.
Get out and here you have it, John.
Okay.
So just as far as that is concerned, making sure that you understand the CDC guidelines are still saying within 6 feet for a total of 15 minutes or more. That could be considered a close contact. And then steps to take, again, staying home 14 days afterwards, making sure that you're taking your temperature, shortness of breath. One thing we have been told is that if you are experiencing maybe other symptoms, but the minute that you're really struggling with that breathing piece, that is when to make sure you are getting medical attention. And then if possible, staying away from others, including those who might be in a higher risk category if you are staying at home. So I want to make sure that I don't have any questions. I know a couple of people popped on video. That's okay. Just making sure. So I'm giving a second here while I move to the next slide. Okie dokie. All right. So one of the things that we've seen a lot is this mental health piece. One of the things that has happened is we've had more and more people test positive for COVID. And even though these are health, like personal health information that needs to be protected, and I'll talk more about that in another slide. But as you're going through this, one of the things that we've seen is mental health is a huge priority at this moment in time. We're seeing a lot of stigmas about COVID-19 because there's still some unknowns about it. The word gets out into the workplace or amongst family and friends, and that can cause stigmas for those people who maybe have been exposed and recovered from COVID-19. So understand that that exists right now. It's not just that. There's insecurity about jobs. I still have a job. I know that there are people who are not wanting to report, for example, because they're concerned that then they'll have to stay home and not be able to continue working. And that is a very big source of anxiety for a lot of people. And even if there are protections, there are still community areas, or not community, but I would say businesses where this feels less safe to be able to say, I feel like I have COVID-19 symptoms. So there is in reality, and then there is, what we're supposed to be doing. So I would just want to make sure that people are being mindful of this, that there is that mental health component that is happening, that testing anxiety exists. I know there are still people who are don't want to be on a list, don't want to go out and get tested because they don't want to be a part of some list somewhere else. And it's very scary for some people. So keeping that in mind and sharing your message with your employee and your patrons is going to be really important, so that safety is most important. There's a lot of public awareness out there. So I've seen a lot. I was in Costco the other day and I heard 2 employees speaking, and one employee was on her shift for that day was mask duty. And her job was to go around the store and make sure people had their masks on. So just kind of keep in mind that there's this public awareness, that people are more open to wearing masks in public, doing those things. And there are certain businesses that are certainly requiring it and even kind of policing it on their own in their own organizations. And then the rumors, like we've talked about this was interesting. It's on the Colorado website, but the rumors about getting good information, making sure that you're pulling reliable information, because there's a lot of information out there. And so I always say that I think that the Colorado website for Colorado businesses is a great place to start. CDC, certainly another good place, but even then being sure. Today I was on the website, just making sure I didn't grab anything that wasn't up to date. And as I was looking at it, they are still referencing in some of these areas when it comes to your employees, the Colorado HELP requirements. And Courtney, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but to my knowledge, Colorado HELP was not something we needed to worry about any longer because we are using the Healthy Family Workplaces Act. So even on our own sites, there are some things that are referencing, in my opinion, not as relevant data as you want to be accessing as an employer. So keeping that in mind, if something doesn't look right, or I'm not sure, why does it say 10 days here and 14 days here? What does that mean? Ask questions, reach out to the people who may be able to help you and give you the right information, because that's going to be really important as we're moving forward. And then contact tracing in general, again, just making sure that you understand kind of what the parameters are there. Contact tracing can feel very unsettling to a lot of people at this moment in time, because you might have to be giving a lot of information to someone and you're not sure where that information is going to go and how it's going to be used and how that is being traced back. And I think the important piece here is to understand, again, that's protected information, and people who are doing it are going to be trained in how to use the information that you provide. And so once again, I think that just understanding there is a mental component to this, and a little bit of fear and uncertainty and trust is still needing to be earned in these areas. So how you really vocalize that and do your communications around it is going to be really important. So let's talk a little bit about COVID. Oh, yes.
We do have one question.
Yes.
From Candace. Do you know if close contact includes being within 6 feet with or without a mask?
That's a really good question. I'm going to say, to my knowledge, it is within 6 feet. If you are within 6 feet without a mask on, I think that is part of what they're talking about. I'm going to see if it says here in particular. My understanding is I think it's if you're within 6 feet who has COVID-19 for a total of 15 minutes or more. I believe it's when you don't have the mask on. I'll let someone else weigh in and say that is different, but I'm thinking that, you know, the 6 feet requirement with masks, the masks come into play more with the situation you're in. If you're indoors, if you are in a room where you are with someone else and that's a closed room, then masks are required. So I think that the mask for me is more covered in some of those other details. But that's a good question. I think if you're wearing your mask and you're within you're past 6 feet, I feel like as long as that is the situation you are in compliance with not being considered a close contact. But if you are within 6 feet, someone has COVID-19, that would be something that and you've been contact traced for that. That is something that I have seen people go to their physicians to get their opinion on whether or not they should receive a test and consider it a close contact. In which case, you have to go through that testing protocol, let someone know that you're being tested for COVID-19, need to stay home. Then once you get a negative test, you can go back to work. So I would say that generally that would be a question that most of the time we've seen addressed with the physicians. And I think most of the time they are on the side of caution and ask you to do it. Oh, great, Mike, thank you. So Mike said, I've heard it's close contact within 6 feet, even if mask or for extended time. Yeah, I've heard that extended time as well. I'm not sure what level that extended time is to, and it wasn't available on the CDC website. So Mike, again, if you want to share, if you do know, or even put a link into the chat for people, that might be helpful.
But just like your disclaimer, Amanda, not only am I not a lawyer or legal expert, I'm not an HR expert either. I've probably been too many NFL fines for close contact. So
yes,
take that with a grain of salt.
Thank you, Mike. It's a tough situation. I think if I were to give you the best advice possible, I would say if you were contact trace and you believe that you were not in this situation, or if you were even for a less period of 15 minutes, calling your own health provider is a good idea. They'll more than likely probably have you go and take a COVID test, and that COVID negative test will be helpful to you, to your employer, especially if you have employees who are asking about it. Generally, we've been seeing that COVID test for that person who was contact traced or within that close proximity really be the determining factor. So good questions though. I think most people are erring on the side of caution and making sure that people are getting tested if they've had any type of consideration around being contact traced or around someone with COVID-19. Okay, so let's talk about COVID and Colorado businesses. So one of the things that we've seen come about this, obviously we know there's been a lot. I'm in Weld County. I sit on the Weld County Workforce Development Board. So this certainly has been a top of mind communication and consideration for, in Weld County. Our county commissioners have been very focused on this and really wanting to make sure that we're supporting our businesses during this time as well. And I know that there are other business entities out there who've really been vocal about that as well. And trying to figure out how do we still support our small organizations and our small businesses while making sure that we're protecting the public. And so they have developed this 5-star state certification program. Just curious, again, if people want to chat in to the chat, if they're aware of this. I have some understanding around it and just share some of the basics, but just trying to see if anybody out there is really involved in this or aware of it or knows a lot more than I might, because I would love for any other thoughts. So if you do know, please tap in yes. Awesome. People have been certified. That's amazing. Awesome. Great. Okay, so we've got a few people who've been certified. That's amazing. So from what I was seeing on here, star rating since October, awesome. That there was a lot of movement forward trying to make sure that we could say we are adhering to the strictest requirements. And so for that reason, allowing businesses to stay open and thrive. And again, you might have some more insight, but from what I could see, it looks like that you have a administrative committee who's really designed to help make sure that they are in alignment with what needs to happen with the state. It seems that it's pretty involved. It requires some reporting requirements. Love to know if people think that so far, if you are in this, has it been easy so far? So easy, challenging, maybe just throw that into the chat for anybody who hasn't been certified or a part of that. You could say that it was easy, it was challenging, it was not hard at all, whatever you'd like to say. And then that way people know. That there's a third-party inspection requirement, and you need to also have some letters of support. Awesome. People are saying it was easy and take some stress off. That's amazing. Thank you. And then keeping workers and the public safe. So some fast facts here just to kind of keep you aware of what is happening. But in this one, you'll note that it says, again, for Colorado workplaces, that you want to isolate, stay away from others at least for 24 hours or 10 days since your symptoms first appeared. Again, CDC is talking 14, but generally the state of Colorado is saying 10. So that's where you might see some of those differences in thought practice, but I think either one you could use. We really are just trying to make sure we're staying within guidelines of what Colorado requires. Awesome, very easy certification done virtually, not hard. So just sharing back what people are saying about this in case you haven't taken a look at that 5-star state certification program. Okay, COVID and privacy. So one of the things that I've known or noticed when we've kind of worked with new clients and kind of walked in and talked about different things is a few pieces here. One, making sure that we understand that this is private health information. It is considered PHI, and that is the acronym for us in the HR world. And really the design for that is designed to make sure that we are keeping that information confidential. So for example, if you offer health insurance benefits to your employees, or you offer some type of short-term disability or life insurance policy, like even things like that for smaller businesses we see be very popular. Anything that would be related to an employee's information regarding that needs to be kept in a separate file from their regular personnel file. That's the law has always been. COVID would be considered that same type of personal health information. And so any kind of temperature checks you're doing, any type of symptom checks you're doing, you need to make sure that someone is keeping that under lock and key. It's not public knowledge. And then if you're keeping that for your employee files, that again, they would be in a separate documented area. So this is very important to understand that when we know that, you can't control water cooler talk is what I want to call it. You can't control if Joe goes and tells Betty, hey, I tested positive for COVID-19. But you can control if you've got a check-in file form that everyone uses and it's all in the same document that every employee sees. And so they can see someone's temperature has gotten above 100. That is not public information. So one of the things that we've seen is that really needing to make sure that you're locking down how you're taking temperature checks, how you're doing that as a business, because it's really important that you keep that separated. As well as one of the things that we're seeing is it's been a little bit of this is my opinion. I'm sharing with you. I haven't had any symptoms. I'm coming in, I'm walking in the door to my doctor's office. Let's say, for example, I don't have any symptoms that you're asking. You do my temperature check. I am good to go. I walk in. We have seen now that in some organizations, they're actually having people fill out some type of quick form and signing off on it. So not only are they saying, I am telling you these things, I am now signing my name so that you know it and have some type of record for people coming in their doors. So that's interesting. I've just seen that recently. I don't know if that would extend to the restaurant community. It's a different type of situation, but for like offices and things like that, we have definitely been seeing that start to happen. Another question here, awesome. So it says, so can you have them all record symptoms, temps on the same sheet, or they have to have separate sheets for privacy? To my knowledge, again, if there is going to be like identifying information, I am Amanda Erickson, my temperature is this, and I have this, it would need to be on separate sheets so they couldn't all see it. Now, you may have one person who's responsible for taking all of that information on the same sheet, and that one person understands the importance of health and welfare information being confidential. And we've seen that be okay. But if it's just a general like clipboard template that anybody could see, that would be considered personal health information. And for that reason, you wanted to have that locked down. So what we've seen happen is people do Google Docs and saying, as you log in, your first thing is to log into this Google Doc and complete it. And then somebody's seeing the Excel results on the back end. That's something we've seen. We've seen people use like a OneDrive or Google Drive or something with each person's name, and they have their own file and they go in and update a template. We've seen a variety of ways to do it. And if this is mainly, again, if you're going to be in person with people, more so than if you're remote working. But great question, Candace. Okay, I just put some information about contact tracing in here just so that people kind of understand. I would say that I've had instances where people have not been contact traced. So if you are the employer where you know I might have a situation where this needs to happen, we are sometimes seeing that HR will step in and make sure that we get some of that handled right away. And I think that's not a bad practice so that you can make sure, because otherwise contact tracing can take some time. And then the more time for somebody to spread that to others is more likely. So again, if you're looking at it, this is how it's being done. This is that information that is representative of what they need to know and who has access to it. And even when someone is contact tracing someone else, it's you have been around someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. That's the words. It's not, you know, Joe tested positive for COVID-19 and we know you were in this room with that person. That's again, that personal health information that we want to keep private. Okay. So other tips, again, just a nice little piece of information here. I pulled the most recent mask requirements. So masks and safety, not required for people who are 10 years and younger. That they should not be worn by people or children under the age of 2. And then again, just some general guidance as to what masks should have, what they should not have. Other tips, making sure that we are washing our hands, doing all of those things, good practices. And then certainly in your organizations, making sure you're following cleaning guidelines, which there's a lot of them out there with the CDC. So something to just kind of keep in mind there. One of the things that I still want to recognize is that masks are not required for people who medically can't tolerate it, which is interesting because so for 2 reasons. One, there's a certain stigma with masks that has existed. And sometimes now if we see people who don't wear masks, that might be a stigma in the other direction. And here's the thing, we don't know that person's story. We don't know why they may not be able to use it. Not every disability is visibly obvious. And I think that's really important to understand as you're looking at this, to refrain for judgment, refrain from, even if you're the Costco employee, making sure that masks are being worn, how we ask that person is going to be of importance, why they may not be wearing that mask. And so ADA requires for employers to provide accommodations for people who need them. And so there are a variety of ways, but I just want to call that out and say that there might be things that we need to talk about as far as how an accommodation may need to be made for someone who's not able to wear a mask, and whether or not that's something that your business can do. You can still require that people wear masks, but I just wanted to call that out in a certain level, just to make sure you understand that there is still an accommodation piece when we're talking about the workplace in particular. So if you have further questions on that, I'm certainly happy to reach out and talk with you more about that piece, but I just wanted to kind of call that out. So outbreaks, I think this is important just to recognize. We have confirmed outbreaks, 2 or more people who are confirmed cases of COVID-19 in a workplace or facility with the onset within 14 days. So this is why making sure that you're tracking that information, you know who's been in contact with who, is going to be really important. A suspected outbreak then is just 2 or more people who are probable cases. So it's confirmed versus probable, and something to just kind of keep your mind on as to how you might need to be looking at notifying your public health agency, or start doing contact tracing for your own employees, whatever that may look like. And I got a question here. Are people that are vaccinated fully still required to wear a mask? Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. I've been curious about that as well. I don't honestly know the answer to that. I think that for a period of time, there was a similar question happening at the beginning, which was, if I've had COVID-19, now am I required to wear a mask anymore because I might be quote unquote immune? I know that the answer back then was, we're not sure, because we're just not sure how this virus operates. I don't know if they would feel comfortable saying, no, you don't have to wear a mask, without some type of identifier that would say this is why. But I don't honestly know the answer to that question. So if someone else is fully aware, I certainly didn't see anything about it when I was doing updates on this from my standpoint. So I don't know the answer to that. I can certainly look, but my inclination is to say, says, yes, they should, because they could spread a new strain or be asymptomatic carrier. Awesome. Wonderful. And Courtney agrees. I like that. So yeah, again, I think that it's very hard to discern where we're at with everything in this situation. That to my feeling is it's going to be a lot of the norm going forward, the mask requirement for an indefinite period of time, just while we're working through all of the possible nuances of what this virus is doing to our communities. So last but not least, as we start working with the Healthy Families Workplaces Act, supporting your team members when leave is needed. So again, coming back to that mental health piece and people being nervous about being able to share that they are experiencing COVID-related reasons for leave. And I know Courtney is going to talk a lot about this in the next session as far as the Healthy Families Workplaces Act and what it requires and allows for employers. And I think that, and as an employee or a team member for your organization. So I think that this is a big component to that. And I want to make sure that you all know that there are protections out there for employees, regardless of size of establishment. So those are things that we want to make sure we dive into and you have full awareness of. And we have one more question in here, and then if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to try to work through those. Let's see. So the question is, for those who haven't looked at it in chat, been trying to figure out the definition of an essential manufacturing worker in Colorado to figure out if my guys and I are eligible for vaccines in phase 2 or not. Have you heard any determination for wineries, breweries, and distilleries? That is a really good question. I will tell you, I honestly don't know as far as essential workers with those particular industries. I know that we've seen manufacturing and we've seen people who are involved in, like, for example, even in procurement positions, but are supporting like the ag culture or agriculture community, because that's the food supply. I know that they are being considered phase 2, but I'm not sure about the determination for wineries or breweries. Courtney, I don't know if you know that or have an
Yeah,
option.
I was just typing a chat, but maybe I can
Yeah.
unmute.
Yeah, please do.
I am not aware of those industries being called out specifically. So no, I guess is my quick answer there.
Yeah, mine as well. I
If
haven't
I
heard
might,
that.
if I might chime in, I think the confusion was that, you know, wineries, breweries, and distilleries were considered essential
Manufacturing.
businesses early on. So now that we're talking about vaccine hierarchies, that could be a little different. But
It could
that
be.
was the question. You know, my recommendation was to talk to your county health department because you know, they're the ones who are probably making the determination.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call as well. I don't know. I think you're right. I think that there might be some differences in how they're rolling this out and looking at specific industries as well as what's happening. Like what type of rules they're performing at that period of time. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm happy to take a look and see, especially Doug, since this was somebody, if there's any other resources or information that we can provide, since this was someone who isn't able to attend, and send that back to you. Are there any other questions or comments or anything that people have found? I think that's amazing to hear that it's been really easy for people to work through the special situation. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, the certification program. So I think that's wonderful, helpful information from everyone to share. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, certainly sounds like it's worth the time and stress, and it doesn't sound like it's even that hard. So I think that is amazing. I am very proud of our community and the state of Colorado, and really trying to make sure that we're both taking care of our businesses and our people. So I think that's wonderful that there have been a lot of connecting points and coming together and really trying to make this work for everyone. I think that is all I had. And so I am going to stop sharing. And then, Doug, I don't know if you would like to come back on, or if I should just hand this over to Courtney, or what would you like to do kind of going forward?
Well, I'd like to figure out how to unmute myself. No, I think if there aren't any more questions for Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the information. And if people have questions, may they contact you, or would you rather they go through Cassidy and I?
I think I think it would be totally fine to make sure that if you want to stay in the loop, just so that you know who's asking questions, that would be great. And then you're welcome to forward, because I think both Courtney and I were open to answering questions, and two people's opinion is better. So I think it would be great. That would be the best idea in my mind.
So if anybody has other questions, just shoot them to Cassidy and I. And with that, Courtney, please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm going to share my screen here real quick and get the PowerPoint going. Okay. Nope, I'm not. There we go. How does that look? Can everybody see just the PowerPoint there? Yes? Oh, you know what I can't see here? Okay, great. I realized all right, perfect. Well, good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me to present today. It's wonderful to be with you. Just a little bit of background on myself, if I could. I'm actually a Colorado native. I was born in Greeley to an entrepreneurial family. My grandfather owned a gas station and turned it into a furniture store. So I grew up in retail furniture. But shortly before I graduated from college, my mom decided to sell the store. And I've had an opportunity because of that to work in a variety of industries over the last several years. So I've enjoyed that. And most of my roles have been in human resources and in operations management. So I approach HR from that operations perspective. I've worked with small businesses, nationwide businesses, even in international organization, for-profit, not-for-profit organizations. The last 13 years, I have run my consulting company, Courtside Consulting, excuse me, and really built HR processes and systems for folks, enabling them to run their HR department. So I primarily specialize in people that don't have HR knowledge or don't have an HR person on staff. I've also worked, as Doug said, with the SBDC as a consultant and a trainer, and I'm also teaching a couple of MBA courses at UNC in Greeley right now. So with that experience in operations and human resources, I can say that over the last, we'll just say 30 years or so, I totally understand how confusing and overwhelming changes in employment law can be. As a matter of fact, I have a short story that I got my Colorado employment poster and put it up the other day. And my dog, who's about 3 years old, came in my office just like he normally does. He's a lab mix, and he walked in and he's all happy and everything. And he turned around and he saw the poster on my door and he kind of froze, and then he started growling, and then he ran out of the room. And I think that's exactly what we do with employment law. We kind of freeze, we get angry, and then we just want to avoid it. And so we run out of the room. So hopefully what I'm sharing with you today is going to bring you some ease with that, and at least give you enough knowledge to be able to identify that red flag. Ooh, this is something that I need to talk about or look into further. So looking forward to sharing that with you. Just like Amanda, I've got a disclaimer here that I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. I'm not going to talk about employment law changes from the legal side, but mostly from an operational and HR side. So I'll be talking about checklists and those types of things that you can do to make this easier for you. I am not going to give you legal advice, and strongly urge you to reach out to your attorney, your business attorney, your employment law attorney that you work with, to make sure that any policies or any practices you put in place are legal. Okay, so let's talk about all the changes that we're going to cover today. So January 1st of 2021, there were several laws that changed, and several laws that came into being, actually. So that's what we're going to cover today. Now, my goal is to cover the stuff that you need to know, plus give you a list of things that you need to do to be in compliance. So today we're going to be covering the Colorado Overtime and Minimum Pay Standards Order. It's called the COMPS Order, number 37. We're going to be talking about the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, the Wage Protection Act, the Colorado Whistleblower Anti-Retaliation and Notice Giving Rules, or the warning rules, the State Labor Relations Rules, the Direct Investigation Rules, and then your to-do list. So there you go. This is going to be an exciting 45 minutes. Okay, maybe not that exciting, but it is important. And there's going to be, I think I can safely say there will be audits conducted by the Department of Labor and the IRS. It really isn't an if anymore. It is a when. So there could be fines, and some of them could be quite large. Hopefully today's presentation will help you better understand what you need to do so that you can avoid those fines. All right, so let's talk about the Colorado Overtime and Minimum Pay Standards Order number 37, COMPS number 37, the COMPS Order number 37. So the COMPS Order number 37, not surprisingly, replaces COMPS Order number 36, right? They're in succession order. Now, what happened is COMPS Order number 36 was actually had substantial changes in it last year. And they introduced it in March of 2020 when the pandemic was just getting started and things were just starting to shut down. So the idea that every employer has an understanding of COMPS Order number 36 and knows what all of this means, that may not be, that may not be the reality. I think that this COMPS Order, COMPS Order 36 and now COMPS Order 37, could be missed by many Colorado employers. So I wanted to make sure that you review this carefully and ensure that you're in compliance with the regulations. Now you can just Google comps order number 37 in Colorado, and it's going to pull it up and you're going to be able to see it. And I've got what it looks like here in the next slide. So there are a few things that I want to highlight on comps order number 37. There were a few changes made. The change in minimum wage. So overall Colorado minimum wage went to $12.32 an hour. If you have tipped employees, that minimum wage is now $9.30, unless you're in Denver. And if you're in Denver, that minimum wage is $14.77 and the tipped wage is $11.75. The minimum salary amount. So when you have an employee, you can decide if they're hourly or salary based on a bunch of criteria. And we're not going to go into all that criteria today with regard to job duties, but that's something you should really look at because misclassified employees can really be costly for businesses. So just to reiterate, you cannot decide if somebody's hourly or salaried. Really, they fall into certain categories. And in order to be on a salary, they have to meet certain exemptions. And you can find those just by looking at exempt versus non-exempt or hourly versus salary in Google or your search engine. And you'll be able to pull those exemptions up. But one of the criteria for people to be on salary is for them to have a minimum salary level. And the minimum salary level for Colorado is higher than the federal minimum salary level. In Colorado, it's $40,500 or $778.85 a week. The other thing that the comps order number 37 does is it incorporates a lot of the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act regulations into the order. And so since that legislation came into effect January 1st, it adds it to that order so that you have a kind of a one reference that you can look at with some of that information. It also says now that time worked includes security screenings, donning and doffing uniforms, clocking in and clocking out, receiving or sharing work information like staff meetings or quick stand-ups or those types of things. That now is all considered time worked. So that has to be calculated into any overtime estimations or calculations. And it also has to be paid for based on what that person gets per hour, or if they're a salaried employee, they'd obviously get paid for that in anyway. It also includes a new creative professional exemption. And so that information is in there. There's eliminated exemption for interstate transportation workers. So that exemption is gone now. And there's also an increases in a few salary or pay rate guidelines for outdoor educational seasonal workers and highly technical computer related occupations, probably dealing with more programming and computer analysis, those types of things. Okay. So I just realized that I'm not seeing the chat. So if you have a question, please feel free to just interrupt me and just unmute yourself and ask your question so we can make sure that we get that answered. Okay, this is what the comps order number 37 looks like. This is the actual poster. Now, there are posting requirements and notification requirements for this comps order. First, you must display this poster in an area frequented by employees. If you have a all-in-one employment poster that maybe you've gotten from a poster service, this comps order will be on that poster. But if you haven't, then you can download it for free and just print off the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and actually post that next to your employment poster. So this must be posted and distributed to your employees within the first month of employment, or get that distributed to them right now. Get that out to them. If you have a handbook, and some organizations do, some organizations don't, but if you have a handbook, you want to include the comps order number 37 in that handbook as part of that packet that you hand to the employee. Now, if you do have a handbook, you should have an acknowledgement of receipt, something they sign that says, yes, I did get my handbook. And so just make sure that the comps order is included on that. I received my handbook and comps order number 37, for example, and have them sign the acknowledgement of receipt for that. If you have an employee who has limited English skills, you must obtain a translated poster. So you can either find that online or contact the Department of Labor to see where you can find that, or your poster company if you're working with a poster service. Now, there are also exemptions from this comps order for agricultural workers. And those have not changed. So those exemptions that you've been dealing with maybe with regard to minimum wage in some cases, but certainly to overtime, you can rest assured those have not changed. There was no announcement on that. Many of the laws that are going to be discussed today do have posting requirements. So I'm going to mention those as we move through these laws. Make sure that you understand them and have the appropriate posters in place where employees can see them, like in a break area. If you have remote workers that are not working on site, but they're working remotely, remote posters are available from some poster companies. And certainly if you need any information on that, just let me know. Okay, let's move on to the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. Colorado is the 10th state in the United States to pass an equal pay law that is more demanding than federal law. This law was passed in May of 2019, but unfortunately many business owners did not have this on their radar, and it really could cost them. It was passed in May of 2019, came into effect January 1st of this year. This act protects discrimination based on sex, and that includes gender identity, or in sex, discrimination against sex in combination with another protected status like age or race or religion or something like that. Employers are not allowed to pay one sex less than another for substantially similar work. And they look at that and they measure it by skill, effort, responsibility, those types of criteria to determine what is similar work. So in other words, if you have two employees and they're both supervisors and one's male and one's female, and you're paying the male more, that could be a problem. It could be a problem. The employers can use certain criteria to say, well, yeah, I'm paying that male employee more because of these reasons. And that certain criteria includes seniority. It includes merit. It includes quality or quantity of production. It includes education and experience, if that education and experience or special training is specific to the job that they're doing. So if you have somebody with an outdoor recreation degree and they are leading a team in the field, that outdoor recreation degree does not necessarily have direct impact on their job as a supervisor. And so in that case, you could not use the fact that they have a degree to pay them more than somebody who doesn't have a degree, for example. But if they have a horticulture degree, or they have a botany degree, or they have something that is directly related to the work that they're doing, then in that case, you can consider that. So that's what that education and experience is. There's also geographic location. So you may have employees that are in various areas. And so maybe one area demands a higher wage than another area. Or if they travel a lot as part of their job. And I don't just mean like commuting to work or commuting, a couple miles away, if they're actually doing heavy travel. For example, I used to work in an insurance industry, flying to Utah every other week. So that kind of travel, that kind of consistent travel is what they're looking for there. Now let's talk about the posting and notification requirements. You must notify employees of their rights under this law. And that's going to be written notification plus a poster in the workplace, similar to what we were talking about with the comps order. It also has one of the biggest things that this law has, one of the biggest new requirements, is a important new notice requirement about promotional opportunities and position wages. So as an employer, you must announce, post, or make known all opportunities for promotions to all employees on the same day. And as a part of these postings, employers must disclose the hourly or salary compensation information and a general description of benefits or other compensation offered. So let me kind of walk through this. Let's say that you have a position open in your organization. And you're going to post that position on Indeed or on some other online posting area, maybe a trade association. And so you're going to be posting that job. On that job posting that you're putting up, you need to now include, if it's a Colorado job and Colorado employees can apply for that job, you need to post the range of wages. So either $15 to $20 an hour, $15 to $17 an hour, whatever that looks like, and a description of the benefits. And the benefits are going to be including things like health benefits, life benefits, dental, vision, paid time off, retirement, sick leave, holiday pay, those kinds of things. Now, you don't have to be specific. You don't have to say we offer United Healthcare Plan X insurance, but you do need to say we offer health insurance. So you need to have a brief description of those benefits included on that posting that now goes up on Indeed. And if I remember correctly, Indeed already requires some of that information. So now you've got to make sure that you've got that information and it's complete. In addition, you need to post that same job internally. So I'm recommending that people send it in an email to their employees at the same time. So you post the job on Indeed, or right before you post the job on Indeed, go ahead and put a email together for your employees and send that out with a link to that job posting, or just include an attachment, a PDF of that job posting so that everybody gets it at the same time. You need to keep job descriptions now on your employees. This is a new requirement. We haven't been required really to have job descriptions for our employees. And now you've got to keep those job descriptions with wage and benefit information for each job effective January 1st. So you don't have to go back and say, well, this person's been with me for 5 years and they've had 3 different jobs. And so now I've got to rebuild that. What the law states is from January 1st on. So you need to make sure that you've got a job description in place for what they're doing right now. And on that job description, you're including wage information and that benefit summary. And then you want to keep all the job descriptions for your employees in their employee file for the duration of their employment plus 2 years. So for example, if you have somebody and they have a job now and in 6 months they get a new job, they're going to have the job description that they have right now, and then they're going to have that new job description also in their file. And both of those job descriptions are going to outline the duties that they have, as well as that range of pay and the summary of the benefits that they've received. Okay. Now, there are incentives for you as employers to do self-audits of your pay practices. There's a mini safe harbor provision, if you will, if an employer conducts a self-audit within 2 years of a state audit. So you can conduct that and try to determine, well, if I've got these pay differences, is it because of seniority? Is it because of merit? Is it because of their quantity or quality of production? You know, what are the pay differences? Why do I have those pay differences, and be able to justify those? And then every 2 years, you're looking at it just to make sure that your wages are in balance. And so you're continually reviewing that. And when you get audited, if they ask you about that, you can say, yes, I do. You know, here's my pay audit from 6 months ago, and this is what I determined, and these are the adjustments I made, or here's the justification for those pay differences. The other thing is this incorporates something that came out of the Wage Act, the Colorado Wage Act, that's been in effect for a while. But it also states that the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act states that employers cannot ask about an applicant's wage history, and you can't use wage history to determine wage rate, and you can't discriminate against somebody or retaliate against somebody if they refuse to answer your question about what was their wage history while you're interviewing them. So just make sure that you're not asking employees about their wage history and then building your current wage structure around that wage history. So we've seen that happen in the past too. The other thing that it incorporates is that as employers, you cannot prevent your employees from discussing their own pay information with their peers. So this, you know, you've got to be able to, if they want to talk about what they make and they're visiting with a coworker about that, they're within their right to do that. And you can't you can't prevent that conversation from happening. This law, the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, does give the employees a menu of options to pursue claims against the employers. So this is very important information, and I encourage you to look some more information up. There's a lot of detail online about it, and once you read through a couple of the white papers or a couple of the articles that are out there, you're going to start feeling a little more comfortable with it. So I encourage you to do that. All right, we are going to jump onto the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, unless there are any questions, and I was able to get the chat box up. So are there any questions over the comps order number 37 or over the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act? Okay. Yeah, the employment law. It can be overwhelming for sure. We're gonna move on and get through this though. So the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, it really has three parts. It has a public health emergency leave part, and it has a sick leave part, and then it has a safety leave part, if you will. And so we're going to be talking about those. This leave, we're going to talk about the public health emergency leave just really briefly here. COVID legislation federally was called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And that particular act sunsetted on December 31st. Colorado decided that they wanted to enact something similar just within state law. And so Healthy Families and Workplaces Act has to deal with that. And it's called the Public Health Emergency Leave. And what that does is it provides up to 80 hours over a 2-week period of paid leave if a public health emergency is in effect. So right now, your employees who are out due to COVID are covered under this part of the act, even if they used up 80 hours in 2020 under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FFCRA. So they have basically a new bucket of hours that they can use. And it's up to 80 hours over a 2-week period if they are out with a COVID-related illness. Now, Amanda went through some of those and what that looks like. And so I won't revisit that here. But just know that if somebody calls in and says, hey, I think I might have COVID, or I'm getting tested, or I'm waiting for test results, or those kinds of things, that they most likely qualify for that public health emergency leave under the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act. Now, right now, that's been extended until I think it's right around the time where it's going to expire again, and they're going to re-up that public health emergency. So what happened was it covered through 2021. They extended it for a few weeks, and if the pandemic is still going on, which we all know it is, they're going to extend it some more. So be on the lookout for that information. The second part has to do with paid sick leave. Now, employers with 16 or more employees, effective January 1st of 2021, have to provide paid sick leave to their employees. So the act mandates that employers accumulate paid sick leave by accumulating 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours worked. So if your employee works 30 hours, they get 1 hour sick leave. That's full-time, that's part-time, that's temporary workers, those all apply. Now your full-time are going to gather that time quicker because they're working 40 hours or more a week. And your part-time who only work 20 hours are going to, or 10 hours, they're obviously going to gain that at a slower rate. But the 1 hour paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked does come into play. As I said, employers with 16 or more employees, this comes into play now. All employers in Colorado are going to be responsible for this accumulation of paid sick time effective January 1st of 2022. Up to 48 hours, which is the level, you accumulate that time up to 48 hours. And then it's capped off. then you don't have to accumulate anymore. And you can carry over up to 48 hours over to the next year. While the state recognizes this time as wages, there's also within the law, it says that this does not have to be paid out when somebody leaves the organization. So while you have to pay out vacation or PTO, you do not have to pay out this paid sick leave when somebody terminates and leaves the organization. You cannot retaliate against an employee for using this leave at all. So whether they're using the public health emergency leave or they're using this sick leave, you can't retaliate against them. And you obviously must notify employees with written notice and display a poster with this particular law. I'm going to break just for a second to see that we've had a couple of questions. If the employee calls in with COVID symptoms, then tests negative, how does the public health leave apply? Okay, that's a great question. So the public health leave may not apply because they've already tested and they've tested negative. However, they are experiencing symptoms of COVID. So in that particular case, I would say if they're experiencing symptoms of COVID, that I would go ahead and have the public health leave apply in that situation, because that's one of the reasons to give that public health leave. Okay. Is the public health emergency leave paid leave if you have less than 6? It is for all employers effective January 1st. So that is in effect. And we're going to go over, there are specific reasons for this sick leave, for people taking sick leave, and we're going to go over those in just a minute. We're going to actually outline all of those. So let's talk about the notification. Do I know if there are any exemptions to the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act for AGS employees? I am not aware of any at this time. I'm not aware of any exemptions. So notification poster requirements, you must inform your employees of this right by providing a written notification and displaying a poster in the workplace. Again, if you get those all-in-one posters, it should be included on that. And if not, you can print out the poster, just go to the Department of Labor and get that for free. You must also keep information you learned under this leave as confidential. So Amanda talked about the information, public health information, and how important it is to keep that confidential. This is that type of information. So you need to keep it in a medical file separate from the personnel file. I would keep that medical file for each employee, and you would keep this information in that medical file for that particular employee. There are also limitations around the information that you can require around the specific reason for absence. So with COVID, we have a little more freedom to ask about symptoms. And you know, Amanda showed you a list of those symptoms. We have that freedom and we can ask those questions. But when it gets to other illnesses and reasons for being sick, we're very limited as employers as to what we can ask. So while we have a little more freedom under COVID regulations, just for, gosh, I'm not feeling well, I have the stomach flu, or we don't get to ask a lot of questions around that. Okay. If there are violations of this rule, employee back pay could be considered, and other equitable damages. So let's look specifically at the reasons for leaving. The qualifying reasons for leaving, first of all, there's two groups. There's the employee themselves, and there's the family member. And then there's sickness. So they have an illness, they need a medical diagnosis, they need medical care, and they need medical treatment. So those are reasons that an employee could be out sick. Or if their family member has an illness, needs a medical diagnosis, care, or treatment, then they could take sick leave under the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act for that particular reason. There's a safety component. And when we're talking about the safety component, it's the victim of abuse, sexual assault, harassment, and they need to be absent for purposes related to the crime. And so they've got to take some time off to go testify, or to go find a safe place to live, or to go do something else related to that, to being a victim of those crimes. And so they can take leave under the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act for that. Then the public official ordered closure of a school or place of childcare. again, that gets back into we're quarantining, right? And so we're going to quarantine based on it could be a public health emergency, or it could just be some other reason that they're closing down school or a place of childcare for safety reasons. So those would all qualify under the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act. Okay, so we got through the three big ones. Now let's talk about some of the smaller law legal changes that happen. The Colorado Whistleblower Anti-Retaliation and Notice Giving Rules, or the warning rules. This gives the Department of Labor, or called the division, the authority to enforce rules. It's basically clarifying how they can enforce rules based on Colorado whistleblower, anti-retaliation, and notice giving laws and rules. So it gives them the ability to enforce the rules. It protects against retaliation for exercising the protected rights. So if an employee exercises the protected rights under these rules, you as an employer can't retaliate, interfere with that right. And then there's also notifications that are included in here, of course. So notification of rights to employees about the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, the Public Health Emergency Whistleblower Act, Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, Colorado Wage Act, and others. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that. So again, this is one of those things that is more administrative than really the laws that you're going to have to follow, but it does help clarify some things. Can the Healthy Families leave overlap with, let's see, can Healthy Families leave hours overlap with hours? They wouldn't get paid for both. I'm not sure if that's the question. But if, let's go back. Okay, they wouldn't get paid for both. They would get paid under Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, and it would be either that sick time that we talked about for either the employee or the family, or it would be the public health emergency leave. But it wouldn't be get paid for both, so they wouldn't benefit from having COVID. Does that help you, Sherry? Okay, great. All right. All right, let's move on to the state labor relations rules. This is just basically stating that there's a partnership for quality jobs and services. There's a partnership between the Department of Labor and the Employment Division of Labor and Standards and Statistics with the Quality Jobs and Services Act. So there's a partnership going on, and it's to facilitate a labor management partnership in those agreements between employees with the state personnel system and the executive branch of state government. So this one primarily has to do with government and how they run the rules within the government. And then the Wage Protection Act. These rules set forth a procedure for employees to file wage complaints or wage claims with the division, and then sets out the rules for how the division is going to investigate, make determinations, or handle any kind of appeals within that process. So a lot of the changes that were made in this particular Wage Protection Act has to do with the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act. So, so that's where the changes are made. And then direct investigation rules. This details the authority to investigate potential violations of various labor standards, and then includes some of the laws I've been talking about today, the Healthy Families and Workplaces Act, Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, and others. So let's talk about your to-do list. Unfortunately, it's a little bit long, and these items are not just easy items. They look like, well, you know, here's just a few items. Review your pay practices. That could take a long time, but it is recommended. We talked a little bit about the mini safe harbor that is included in the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. And so this is one of those things, if you review those pay practices and you can say, look, I've got some pay differences, but I can justify it based on the factors, again, seniority, merit, quality and quantity of production, those kinds of factors, and I can justify it, then you've done that due diligence and you've gone through and you've looked at your pay practices. So that's really important. Use only justified reasons for pay differences, and that's what I just mentioned: seniority, merit, quality and quantity of production, education and experience and training only if it's related directly to the job being done, travel, for some of the things, those are the things that were mentioned, okay, and are listed in the act. And then add a wage range and benefit summary to your job postings and job descriptions. So make sure you have that information there, and make sure that that you're including that information and getting those that promotional information, those job postings out to all of your employees. Be sure and create or update your job descriptions with that wage information and the benefit summary information. If you have 16 or more employees, start the accumulation of paid sick leave. If you have not done that yet, you need to go back and accumulate that to date, and then start accumulating with your next payroll. Make sure that you're displaying and dispersing all the mandatory postings and documents that we've talked about it today, in addition to other postings that need to be up. So there are federal and state, some local laws that need to be posted within the workplace. So make sure that you're following those. Update your employee handbook. Make sure that you're updating your employee handbook to include these new laws and these new regulations, and update your procedure manuals to make sure that you're following procedures that have been outlined by these new laws as well. And then provide your employees with required notifications of their rights. So make sure that in certain cases, you want to actually hand your employees a notification, like the comps order. You want to hand that to them and make sure that they have a copy of that. You can go to the colorado-checklist.com for more information if you want. And as we just talked about, I'll make sure that you can reach out to me as well. If you have any questions, feel free to do that, or you can go through Doug or normal channels to make sure that you've got that information. It says, can you cover the federal rules about tax retention to cover paid sick leave because of COVID? Is that still in effect? That's a great question. So the federal law ended on December 31st. So that is not in effect anymore. And so what I would suggest that you do is reach out to your accountant, because any leave that you gave in 2020 would fall under that. Any FFCRA leave that you gave in 2020 would fall under those tax rules and regulations. And so please reach out to your tax accountant, to the person who does your taxes, to ask them for more information on that. Unfortunately, I'm not a tax expert, so I don't want to give any advice in that particular area, but I'm sure your tax person can help you there. Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to answer other questions or help you in any way that I can.
Well, thank you so much, Courtney. We are very grateful. And yeah, that was a lot of information.
It really was. It really was. And I cut it down. I mean, that's the thing to remember. I didn't give you everything. So please be sure to look things up and reach out to your resources, to your attorney, or to an HR consultant, or to your resources within the within your network to learn more if you need any help.
Quick question.
Yes.
The 60 employees, is that FTEs or is that just straight up employees?
Yeah, it's actually straight up employees, because it encompasses part-time, full-time, those seasonal workers. All of those people are eligible for this type of leave.
I don't know if this applies to John, but I know it's going to apply to some other businesses. If you have a separate company, so if you have two companies, one for the winery, one for the vineyard, is the threshold 16 employees for both, or combined?
So is it a DBA, or are they two separate companies owned by the same person?
Let's go with two separate companies owned by the same person.
Yeah, so I think great question for probably more of an attorney, just to make
Okay.
sure that you've got that right. I think it's going to be, they're going to be looking at the organization, but in other laws, they have actually said one owner, two businesses, we're going to count all those employees. And so in this particular case, I would make sure that that you check with your attorney on that before you before making a determination.
It's interesting how attorneys keep popping up in our conversation.
You know, I wonder why. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's because you know we're HR and that's great, and I can talk about operational things from an HR perspective, but when we get into law, that's when I start getting a little nervous and I start exiting stage left, as they say.
Speaking from personal experience that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, if you've ever tried to file a quiet title deed, you understand how well attorneys have built job security into the system for themselves. Quiet title deed.
Quiet title deed. Okay.
You have to hire an attorney to represent all sailors living and dead. Anyway, let's move on.
I'm so glad I didn't have to talk about that today because.
Sorry to digress. But let's take a quick break, and I think we are. Oh wow, we're ahead of schedule. We're ahead of schedule. So let's come back at 10:45. I have 10:30 right now. Let's come back at 10:45, and Mike's going to talk about how to address these things with employees.
And for anyone even remotely tempted to not come back, I'll tell you this: I have vetted this material over many, many years of being in business. I wouldn't waste your time or mine if this kind of communication stuff didn't matter. So come on back in 15 minutes. We'll have some fun. See you soon.
All right. Well, we'll know if you're not here. I'm going to stop the recording, but you can either stay plugged in.
Well, Doug, I will mention that I made it back despite lobbying by my dog, who took my sudden presence to mean, oh, we're going for a walk. And,
Yes.
Kind of heartbreaking, one of those heartbreaking little moments that I didn't used to have when I was going to the office every day. So.
I remember those days. And
Yeah.
my dog was perfectly fine with being home alone for hours on end. And now it's like, I just went into the house and she was crying because I blocked her in there all by herself.
Well, plus I have a new support system in place working at home. That is, my wife this morning said, Mike, you're going to put on a jacket, aren't you? Kind of like the curse when you've got the car keys and you're ready to head to the door and your spouse says, is that what you're wearing?
Yeah, another minute and we'll get started here. I think we've got everybody back.
Very good. And I think you already have me capable to do screen share, right?
You should be able to, yeah.
Yeah. Before I do, I guess I'll give a little bit of a background intro that will give you an idea of why me, what brought me here, what the heck is this all about. As I mentioned before the break, this material, unlike the prior two sessions, is more conceptual in nature, but not strictly conceptual. There will be tips, tools, resources, stuff that is for practical use in business. I know this from personal experience, and observation and in my professional life that I'll describe in a moment. First, I want to give a big shout out to both Courtney and Amanda, because my heart goes out to them, because the kind of material they shared is that we were joking about it before the session started, that it's the some people think it's the necessary evil, but the emphasis is on necessary, to go through very meticulously all that sort of information. Because if you've never been an observer or participant in any aspect of an EEOC hearing conducted by an administrative law judge, I will tell you right now that in the eyes of the law and the administrative law judge, the, oh, I didn't know that, is not a valid defense for when somebody files a complaint. In fact, the quickest way to a settlement that's not favorable to you is that, being ignorant of gee, I didn't know I was supposed to distribute that handbook or have the employee sign off on certain things. So thank you, Courtney and Amanda, because even though I'm not one of the step-by-step checklist types, I sure as heck count on them and respect them. So thank you very much. Now, this material today, the reason I'm covering it specifically relates to a long history I've had in business life related to all aspects of strategic communications, dating back decades, because maybe you noticed I don't quite fit the millennial descriptor. I had a corporation life for many years, serving in an executive capacity with two of the top 8 cable broadband providers in the country, both of them privately held, family-owned businesses. And I had the pleasure, but serious responsibility of having responsibility for all internal and external communications. After corporation life, my wife and I were in business together as business consultants, we were franchisees and sub-franchisers for an international business coaching firm. And I got to tell you, between cushy corporate life and working with small businesses and business coaching, I learned way, way more from the experiences I had being a small business owner and working with small businesses, which is where the heavy lifting really happens. None of that, oh, I have a hangnail, I'll call the hangnail department, they'll come fix it. In small, as I'm sure many of you can relate, you have to be self-sufficient. So that was the second career arc. By accident, I stumbled into a third one. I had prior experience in teaching as an adjunct instructor. Before online stuff even happened, I was in the classroom. But in recent years, and especially since moving out to Colorado some 6.5 years ago, I amped up my teaching experience. I teach for Purdue University and West Virginia University in graduate programs in strategic communications. So this stuff that I'm going to cover today is grounded in a heck of a lot of research, because yes, I love research, just not doing it. I love using it, okay, the results of it, but grounded in research and direct observation or experience from myself and many businesses that I've worked with and students that I work with. So some of the material, I even, with their full knowledge, have pilfered from grad students I've had who, come to the programs sponsored by big corporations, a lot of them. So love stealing good material. So that's the backdrop for today. I had 2 different presentations teed up, and flipped a coin about which one to choose, because one of them was a little more along the lines of Courtney's and Amanda's, but I went with this one. Some people call them soft skills, but I know they ain't soft. These are not soft. These are essential people skills. So that's what we'll cover today. I will now knock out my video and do a screen share, find my presentation. And if everybody thinks they can see it on their screen, in fact, if you don't, just shout out, okay, Doug's giving me the thumbs up. This is good. And Doug, by the way, if you see stuff in the chat and I don't stop to regard it, you can just signal me and I will pay attention. This presentation that I did choose, well, we'll get into all that. I am now in addition to my teaching work, I have this day job. I kind of missed the retirement memo, I guess. My day job is with the Larimer County Economic Development Department. We are affiliated with the Workforce Center, hence the title Economic and Workforce Development. My program is Elevate Training. It is a leadership and management training program that when I started the program about 6 years ago, it was strictly confined to Larimer County. Now it's for anyone. I get registrants from even all over the country, but definitely crossing boundaries. Most of my customer base is in Larimer County or Weld County, but the training courses available through Elevate are opened up to any of you across the state. In fact, encouraged, because it's sort of a unique program, the only one of its kind among the 14 Workforce Center regions in Colorado. So that's the backdrop of this program. The core curriculum, the presentation I didn't choose, I would be honored to present the material to this entire group or any of you separately. The core curriculum is called Skillful Talent Series. It's about skills and competency-based employment practices ranging from the recruitment and job posting stage on through screening and interviewing and onboarding and employee retention. So we are delighted to offer those courses at no charge. So keep it in mind, my contact info will be at the end. So let's press on with what we're here to talk about today. Enlisting employee brand champions, that is getting the employees that you have on board more energized and focused on your business vision and mission. And also ways we will get into some grassroots practical things that you can do to get better communication going in your organization, no matter what size it is. Because a lot of this stuff, it's not just for the big corporations, even though I've worked in big corporations, it's for any size business. So moving along, I will tell you that not only is talent a terrible thing to waste, but I remember I used to start my in-person workshops with a question I'd ask just to see the reactions or that I'd see on the faces, because I would say, as a hiring philosophy, do you try to hire stupid people or people you don't like or trust? And of course, I'd get the reactions you'd expect that, well, not intentionally, of course not. So on the premise that if you're hiring smart, capable people that you like and trust, then why would you not leverage the power of trust and transparency that gets them more involved in your business rather than on a need to know basis? So that's sort of the basic premise I'm starting with. Let me dimension the issue for you with this visual of what the U.S. workforce engagement picture looks like as surveyed by the Gallup people. Every odd numbered year, they update their surveys, typically do more than 50,000 employee surveys about, do people feel engaged in their workplace? And so the 1 year ago, the 2019 results came in and said some pretty astonishing things. This little boat represents the results. And the funny thing is, 1 year ago, the press release that accompanied the release of the data captured from the 50,000 plus interviews was celebrating that, wow, there had been a nearly 10% increase in the number of employees saying that they feel engaged in their companies. Yay, right? That was the headline. A little bit of fake news, because it was an increase from 31% to 34% of employees responding to the survey that, yes, they feel engaged in their workplace. So that 1/3 of people is represented by, maybe you'll see my mouse hovering around. Oh, there's Mike right in the front. These are the engaged employees rowing in the right direction that you want them to. And they're into it. They get the vision and mission. They are the leaders. Yay. But I was dismayed that they were celebrating that there was an increase all the way up to just over 1/3 of employees saying they're engaged, because those people in the middle in the sort of butterscotch colored seating in the boat, they're just along for the ride. They're just sitting there. They're the ones who in the survey said, I feel disengaged. These 19%, the ones back here looking like they're ready to jump ship, they're the ones who describe themselves as actively disengaged. So that is a little bit distressing, okay? Not only that, of these two groups that said they feel disengaged, a vast majority of them said that they are looking elsewhere for other opportunities. And so, gosh, to the average employer, that sounds pretty bad. It, sounds like employee turnover and the costs and time to hire new people and all that. Yeah, that's pretty bad news that more than half of them want to get out. What about the ones that don't? What about the ones who are content to just be on board? Or these two in the blue, you might as well give them paddles to be rowing the other way. Because if highly disengaged people are staying on board, then they're not doing you any good. Now, keep this in mind. I said 1 year ago that these results were released. This was pre-COVID. So now layer in that piece with uncertainty and fears, etc. Got kind of a big mess. See, aren't I just the perkiest guy? Gee, Mr. Danny Downer followed Debbie Downers. Here's another bit of surveying by the Gallup people that is really interesting, because this surveying, again, the Gallup people are pretty thorough about their research. More than 50,000 interviews with employees at all levels who had left their employers. And they were asked, why'd you leave? Okay. Now, I want you to give some thought, because I'm going to disclose the top 4 reasons, either in chat or just to yourself, or heck, you can even shout it out. Be thinking about where you think pay ranks in the top 4. Okay, so there's the question I'll pose to you. Where does pay rank in the top 4? I'll start with number 4, and number 4 isn't pay, it's supervisor. Yep, the bad boss factor. But please note that the definition didn't always mean, oh, the boss was a jerk. Could be, but in many cases, it was just a case where the supervisor was not well equipped to be a good boss. Look at the chat. Yeah, somebody thought 4th would that pay would be in 4th place. we'll move on and see about where pay lands. Third, growth and advancement. Growth and advancement does not mean the same thing as it used to. Growth and advancement well, I go way back in a time when it always meant vertical. Work your way up the ladder, especially with younger folks in the workforce these days. That isn't what it means. It means my professional growth personally is important to me. It can be horizontal, cyclical in nature, but it's not straight up the ladder. So pay isn't number 3. It's also not number 2. In fact, the next time there are results of this survey, I would expect that this rising star, purpose. What is our purpose? What are we doing here? Why do we do this? Who is benefiting from the work we do? This too is more important than ever for the 2 youngest segments, millennials and Gen Z in the workforce. They want to know, what's the purpose? By now, most of you have guessed that it was a trick question for me to say, where does pay rank? Because I'm pretty sure you know that the results would not be that pay is the number 1 reason. Appreciation was cited as the number 1 reason for people leaving an organization. And they described that. What they mean by it, it meant that, hey, I want to be recognized for who I am. Do you even know who I am? And the contributions I make to the organization. So appreciation ranked number 1. So looking at that interesting finding, I sort of crafted my own definition of recognition and what I think it means. So this one, I haven't trademarked it, but heck, I've shared it in enough workshops where I get a lot of agreement on these 3 little words totaling 6 letters. Pause a second, see if anybody wants to plug into chat what you think those 3 little words totaling 6 letters might be. Guesses? If not, it's these. In on it. Okay? In on it. Meaning, when people feel like they're not just the task doers that, okay, sit there, do this task, see you later, alligator. It's not enough for today's workforce, and that is not just the youngest, but most anyone. So this way to describe appreciation or recognition, the in on it factor, people just want to know. You would be surprised, in fact, how many of your employees want to know more about the business, and we'll get to that later. The emphasis on talking shop with your employees. So extending from this and ways to sort of capitalize on this need and interest people have in being in on it. Let's look at the power of trust. Power of trust. We're going to also look at transparency. I'll give you an example that goes beyond just conceptual, using an illustration that I'm sure that we have many of us in attendance today who are frequent shoppers at Nordstrom down in Denver, right? You go there for the grand piano music and making a mortgage payment level for a tube of lipstick or whatever. So no, this is a tough sell when I'm working with, say, small manufacturing companies or whatever, to get them to imagine Nordstrom can be a good example for them to think about. But Nordstrom, and I got this from a grad student who wrote a paper for me about Nordstrom and their employee handbook in customer relations. they're so confident about their onboarding that they equip when their people hit the floor as customer relations representatives, they're armed with this Nordstrom handbook, which I'm now going to cover thoroughly in detail. I'm going to cover the entire handbook. And so I hope we don't run out of time. Be ready to take copious notes. Rule number 1 in the handbook: use best judgment in all situations. I'm sure you know what's coming next. There are no other rules. Now, this may sound extreme for your business. I mean, imagine the manufacturers that I've worked with, or service industry companies who, wow, have their doubts about, can you extend that much trust? Because no, I don't expect that everybody can be like the Ritz-Carlton company, another high-end provider of service, but they give a $5,000 sort of allowance to any employee, housekeeping, front desk, engineering, whoever, to solve customer problems. And yes, those are extreme situations that most of us in business would have difficulty getting our arms around. But let me leave you with this on the issue of trust. Let me just suggest this. This is a direction you can take with trust. And so I invite you to consider this question, and you'll be getting this deck, by the way. I'll share it with Doug so he can share it with everybody, because I really want you to bear this in mind. What would greater trust look like in your business? Okay, so just take this concept and apply it to your own situation. And some of those manufacturers that I've been talking about have taught me a lot. When the light bulb comes on that, oh, yeah, here's where we need trust. I've learned the most from manufacturers about the value of trust. Also, transparency. I'm kind of an advocate of open book management, short of information that is personal in nature, such as about pay and benefits, et cetera, that apply to individuals. Opening up more information about how the business works, sharing that kind of knowledge, these byproducts that come from it. The research by a nonprofit based in Denver called Skillful Colorado bears this out, that there are the sort of touchy-feely factors like improved morale, which you can measure, by the way. It's not totally soft, and stronger motivation, things like that. But what I learned from manufacturing is the understanding of interdependencies and the collaboration that has to happen, or systems break down, okay? So that the more that people know about how the entire business operates, the stronger the buy-in can be that, oh yeah, I can't have, like specifically with manufacturers, I remember a group of supervisors who, the way they described it was, they can't have one person's bad day affecting the entire group. So they have each other's backs and they hold each other up. I remember a merchant in Estes Park. It was not Snowy Peaks, but somebody Snowy Peaks knows that, among other things, sells ice cream. And when they just explained how, oh, that little half scoop that just slipped by the wayside, either digested by somebody or dropped on the floor or whatever, how that adds up, you'd be surprised. People do want to be in on what the business plans are and how the business works. So that's what I'm referring to about the power of transparency, sharing more knowledge about all facets of the business. Now some how-to. You can get there by employing a technique that I refer to as the communication cascade. Now, I will ask you to imagine something in a moment. For in-person workshops that I've done, I've risked having people close their eyes and imagine waterfalls, but I can't see all of you out there, so who knows? I don't want you to doze off, but I do want you to imagine for a moment. Take a second to go somewhere. I want you to imagine your favorite waterfall. Most of us have one in mind. So your favorite waterfall, and take yourself there. Now, okay, so get that going in your head. Are you there? If you're there, can you hear it right now? I do. I know where this one is for me. It's called Cedar Creek. You can hear it, and that's the whole idea of the communication cascade, and it works at any level of organization. Because the whole idea is that that there sometimes people bring up top-down communication like it's a negative thing. It's just the reality that people expect leadership from the top, and so they need to get clear direction and vision and mission from the top, so that the information comes down to everyone and picks up force along the way, and down to that bottom, the bubbling up factor down here. These are the frontline employees bubbling up their good ideas. So that's how a cascade works. Problem can enter in. Here's a simplified org chart, okay? Because your organization may have managers and supervisors or not, okay? But what's being depicted here is what happens when there's a gap in information. Because unless you relish the thought of spending a ton of money on a fancy marketing agency that will come in and try to tell you what your vision and mission should be and put a coat of paint on it, crank out some t-shirts and slogans and fill up a bunch of flip charts. Yeah, great. I contend, and I think some of you can relate to this, that if you want to know what the vision for the company is, ask the boss. They know they have a vision. They want to share that vision. They'd like everybody to buy in. Trouble is, in organizations, and again, I've seen it in all types and sizes of organizations, that when the boss doesn't get that clearly conveyed to the front line, or the managers who, in the case of companies where there's a layer of management reporting to the CEO, when they get a pass on conveying the information, that is such a huge wasted engagement opportunity with employees, because then people just go back to their little silos, talking the way they talk, and stuff gets relegated to HR people or sales people to have to write a memo or have a little pep rally. Can't be the way it works. Everybody has to be on the same page with the CEO owner. Because then when you do, and I remember a CEO I served, not surprisingly, best boss I ever had was a woman, a former CFO, who people thought she'd have a bean counter mentality. Instead, she had a sort of test that she would have where everybody who reported to her needed to convey information to their respective teams. Because if she had a hallway conversation or elevator conversation with a frontline person who couldn't answer certain questions that she had off the top of her head, somebody was in trouble. That is, these people who, it was in our accountability, in our performance reviews, to make sure that we were getting the information conveyed correctly. People definitely want that info. So here's a little formula I'll share with you. And you can write these down, even though I'll be sharing the deck. This little formula is very, you might look at it and say, oh my, these are so basic. Well, right now, in preparation for the Super Bowl, what do you think the two conference champions are doing? Practicing trick plays or throwing footballs through tires? No, they're practicing the basics, because the repetition of the basics is what gets stuff done. So be a GSD organization and follow this formula. I think you'll be happy about it. Starting with ask for employee ideas. Right. Here's what has you saying, oh, Mike, that's pretty basic. Pretty basic, but often overlooked as a valuable tool for the leaders of any organization. Whether you are an entrepreneur who maybe has a small staff where everybody reports to you, or if you have managers or whatever, getting in the habit of asking people for input on a variety of things and asking frequently, whether business or other topics, get employees accustomed to hearing, well, for one thing, hearing their name, that you actually know who they are, and that you're asking for their input. Very important. Then, also important, use some, not all. Don't overpromise. Okay. Sometimes I've seen it in big corporations where they do employee opinion survey and they promise to share all the data with all the employees. They always turn out to be a disaster because people have their concerns and then they wonder, okay, where's the follow-up on it? What I suggest is something a little less formal, and that is if you're asking for the ideas regularly, but then you use some of those, even if you have to plant one or two of them, really a good idea. It shows that, hey, maybe the boss listened and paid attention, showed that they care about our ideas. Thanking them is the part of the 4-part formula. Just thank people for it. And remember that not everybody necessarily likes to be thanked the exact same way. Okay. Some people like just a private gesture. Others are okay with a shout out publicly. But here comes the best part of all, and that is credit people. Because going back to number one, if you're asking people for input regularly, and then you use some of the ideas, let's say you have both Courtney and Amanda covered some stuff that you're not always going to have happy news for the workforce. Okay. Sometimes there'll be policy changes, announcements of sales campaigns, or whatever type of information there is. If you put the ideas out there first and say, hey, we'd like your input, later on then, especially when the news is not terrific that you have to deliver, when you're able to say, we heard you, we brought up this topic, we sorted through everyone's input, here's where we're going. So it just takes the tension, the steam out of some of the information you have to convey. So crediting the workforce for the ideas instead of, if you've got supervisors or managers, any of you who might have leads in that role, convince them that they don't need to be taking bows, credit the workforce with the good ideas. Here are the things to look for in your workforce is checking from, starting with the interviews that you do, bringing people on board, finding out what makes people tick is going to pay off. The more you know about what they do and what their interests are, in addition to the one specific task area that you hired them for, if you just know more about them, it really pays off. And it can even pay off in external relations as well. How do you spot them? The leaders that can help you promote greater communication in the organization, because there are always going to be some folks who don't have title as leader, but they sort of appoint themselves, right? Look for the ones who will help your cause. They have traits that like networking capability, good smile and all that, but the leads well and also takes direction well. Those are the ones that you want carrying the banner for you. A little bit of internal PR here. I want to encourage, again, that pulse surveys use, using people's names and using the question, what do you think? Huge payoffs when, I don't mean to be superficial about it, but it's half the battle to just speak to someone using their name and asking them what they think. You've already really won more than half the battle there. And then team meetings, I know it for some of you goes without saying that of course you'll meet with the team, but don't ever forget that balcony view where the top person in the organization, if you are the owner, I had a couple of bosses who were extreme introverts. They'd shudder at the thought of talking to a group this size. Now, employees literally want to hear the top person's voice and they want to know what they're thinking. So meetings periodically should include that, recognitions for people, but then talking shop is where you can get a ton of benefit. I remember one of the large broadband companies I was with, we had a billing department just getting crushed with customer disputes and so forth. Imagine that, a cable company having some billing disputes. And so the billing department was really struggling because we, the top management, thought we were doing them such a big favor to provide them these little manuals to calculate the amount of credit that people should get on their bills when they had certain complaints. We thought we were being so helpful. Turned out we were just causing worse problems because we were seeing customer service people arguing with people about $3 worth of credit, calculating the number of how many hours were you out and what channels and blah blah blah. Nonsense. I remember the all-employee meeting where we put it out there for the entire team to weigh in on what we could do, and the solution they came up with was so simple, so elegant that I recall the day we shut down the phones for 15 minutes, went out to the dumpster outside the headquarters building and had a ceremonial burning of the old stupid manual. And we equipped people with a simple question that they were encouraged to ask the customers. What do you think is fair? Within a month, we had dramatic decrease in credits having to be issued, and much smaller amounts, because once customers got the tension out of the relationship by saying, well, what do you think is fair? They were recommending stuff that was better than the ridiculous manual that we, the mighty management, came up with. So have the group brainstorm and tell stories from their work, and the result will be a lot of fun. And there can be, by the way, external benefits that when you enlist people as your ambassadors, they're going to represent you better. Let's face it, when they leave place of work, they're going out to do what in other ways. Don't you want them saying and doing all the best things representatives of your organization? And that is my presentation. Here is my contact info that you will all receive. I will now dial down my share and invite any questions that that anyone has. I dare you. If any of this doesn't make much sense for your organization, I hope you would say so.
Not
Big
seeing
payoffs.
I'm not seeing any questions yet, Mike, but I think that was a really nice presentation because it was accessible. Wasn't a training manual that you have to consult for processes, but it was a common sense and personal communications kind of thing. So
Yeah, because look, I know it was preachy and lectury, but I'll tell you what's heading down the pipe, because suddenly there is a massive wave of especially in larger companies, a move toward specific formalized diversity and inclusion initiatives. But I'll tell you right now, I can see it coming a mile away that there will be too much artificiality attached to it, because the real inclusion and diversity already exist in the organization. Because you can't force certain kinds of diversity, but you know what? Every single one of us has diversity of thought and life experience in our organizations. So just bring that out of people. We're making diversity and inclusion way too hard. Keep it simple, just ask people to participate. So I think Daniel wants to tell us something.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, with the heavy diversity coming, let's see, several of the slides back in getting to know people and what they're doing in their community, and trying to get to know them, like, let's see, some of these seem like they kind of, in knowing, open up possible reasons that are going to stick in people's heads for why you like them or you don't like them because of this protected thing or this, or well, yeah. So like,
Right, because I
what's
know
your
what you mean.
church related? I'm not
it's
not allowed to ask those things.
Right, these are things, because I went back to the one that is that you might think is pretty touchy. Sure, if you're the one initiating it, but when you engage people just in conversation where they volunteer their own information, and it's just when the relationships are informal, then all the rules and regs that are going to come down the pipe about diversity and inclusion, yeah, we're going to have to deal with some of that. But I go back to the grassroots level of I'm amused by the woke movements about well, like being enlightened is some new thing. Inclusion is not a new thing. Because there are still communities such as the disability community, for example, who are still having to fight the fight. And so I'll just suggest that informally checking people's aptitudes and interests just lets you have non-polarized, apolitical discussions. You don't have to bring politics into the workplace. That's why I feel like the workplace, the business sector, the private sector is sort of the last bastion for non-polarized discourse and behaviors, because I'll just be honest with you, what you've brought up, my job for Larimer County is to do outreach to businesses. I talk with many businesses. I ask them about their possible training needs. I'll just be honest with you, as much because I'll disclose that my politics might lean a little bit left. I do live in Colorado. And I have yet to have an employer say, Mike, I think we need more of some of that woke thing, the more it's not there. From businesses, they're wanting to know, brass tacks, how can my employees be the happiest and most engaged and productive in their work? That's why this other curriculum I told you about that I would be glad to share at no charge with any organization, small or large, about employment practices that strip all of the political stuff out of it, because there's going to be enough legally required things that we'll all have to do possibly, but some of the stuff makes good sense. I will tell you that I'm part of a state level, if you know who the Bell Policy Institute is, I'm part of an advocacy group about, and not just because I fit the demo, but about age discrimination in employment practices, where too many assumptions are made about older adult workers who either need or want to work. And so when it comes to doing things that are most productive for the businesses, just knowing stuff about people, knowing them, analyzing their work experience matters. It doesn't mean prying into stuff. They'll volunteer it if they feel that you've made it a safe place to say what trips their trigger. Sorry for the long-winded answer to the rifle shot question you had, but no, there isn't any legal prohibition yet that I know of that says you can't get to know people and see what their aptitudes and interests are.
Yes, but there are the people that say that everything is political.
Yeah, I would try not to hire them.
Yeah. Sorry, and so on some of these aptitudes and the previous presentation when we were talking on the equal pay, it was standing out to me that that you can't use off-topic education as a merit. That kind of seems like it's contrary to the good diversity bit of diversity of views and opinions and work history that makes you think, tackle problems in a different way. Oh, it is.
I'll give you a good
is that
example of relatable, transferable skills where something might be perceived as off topic, but not. There was a woman in a workshop I did who she was between jobs. She was a job seeker who was going to dismiss and discount the work she had been doing for a Fort Collins nonprofit. The work she was doing, she was the volunteer coordinator. Now, I don't know about you all. If you've never been a volunteer coordinator, if someone suggests that maybe you should be one, you better run the other way. It is heavy lifting. It's hard work, legitimate work. and it involves organizational skills, interpersonal communication, transferable skills that matter a lot. And so some of these supposedly off-topic things, when the skills and competencies, that's what matters. And they do the job.
I'm sorry, Mike, can I jump in just for a second?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Daniel, you're right. As far as the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, when you're talking about pay discrepancies between two people who have similar jobs, who are doing similar things, there really isn't any accounting for, hey, these people have a degree, and so they've gone to college, so they think this way, or these people have this experience, and so that provides them the foundation to have this type of critical thinking or something like that. There's not really anything specific that says that having a degree warrants new pay unless it's directly related to the job. That being said, from an HR standpoint, when you're hiring people, you definitely should be looking for these things. These should be skill, the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you're looking for when you're hiring someone, to ensure that you have that diversity of thought that Mike talked about, that you have the cognitive diversity, if you will, within your organization to be able to help your organization grow and help everyone within that organization grow and develop together. So don't discount it just because you can't use it in the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act justification factors. Make sure that you're still looking at what you need, the knowledge, skills, and abilities you need for that position, as well as for the team and the entire organization when you're going through a hiring process.
Hey,
a specific question.
What Courtney said, that goes double for me, yeah.
How about ongoing education of people picking up classes in different things, or learning stuff on the side of like, hey, you're increasing your aptitude in in community things. You learn to weld. I don't need you to weld anything, but that makes you seem like a more productive,
right,
an engaged person.
Because as I commonly talk to groups of career-minded people needing to change career pathways or whatever, that unless you're just literally sitting on the couch eating chips and binge watching Netflix, how are you applying yourself? What are the competencies? Because Courtney has it right on the money, that the curriculum that I'm talking about, that there's a screen that I could have showed you today about the value of college degree. We're not anti-college in the program that I run. We are college plus, because let's say you're looking for critical thinking, problem solving, people with conflict resolution skills. You can find that out in the interview process and on their submissions. If you're asking, one of the biggest mistakes by employers is they'll use the hackneyed old pairing of college degree and 5 years experience. Well, both of them, and if any of you want to take me on in a little debate about it, I've done it dozens of times, where a college undergrad degree is not a guarantee of the skills and competencies that you're looking for. Because when I think back to my undergrad, well, I'm sure there was some critical thinking in the mix somewhere, but I can't remember where. And the 5 years industry experience, there's a owner of a large HVAC company near Longmont, who, when he discovered that his insistence on that it had to be guys with industry experience in his large call center and training the people in the call center when he discovered that teachers changing careers who know how to talk people through, problem solving trees and stuff like that. It boosted his business. So yeah, I subscribe to Courtney's view that the demonstration of the skills you have is where it's at, and that college degree is nice, not essential.
Yeah, I mean,
Except for if you're in like, I think the next doctor you want to go to, you want to see that parchment on the wall that suggests they're properly credentialed.
Could I ask a follow-up? And Daniel, thank you for bringing this up. I'm currently sitting on a review panel for a new hire in the markets division. So a lot of these questions are very pertinent. I mean, obviously we can't say to candidates, well, what church do you attend? Even if we can ask, we shouldn't. But we can say, what do you like to do on your time? Is that a legitimate question?
yeah, I think a lot of people ask that. It's a tricky question, right? Because if people say, I go to church, or I go to synagogue, or I go to, those kinds of things, it can lead into a situation. And this is where, honestly, where the operational head, HR head in my body, and the employment law head start clashing, right? Because what we're talking about is, how are we asking questions and getting the information we need to get from the candidates to determine who is the best candidate for the job? How are we asking those questions without breaking a law or infringing on somebody's rights or those types of things, but still getting good information? And
Yeah,
so, yeah, go
that's
ahead,
right.
Mike.
No, well, that famous first question often results in some of the most wasted time in interviews, because everybody's nervous. That first, very often, not all the time, is, tell us a little bit about yourself. It is time to tune in, because sometimes the interviewee is, of course, nervous, and they think they're supposed to say stuff like that's off the resume or the job description, when no. And so the coaching I give to job seekers is, no, say a personalized professional snapshot of you that describe your competencies, not something out of the job description. And the employers themselves are still shuffling papers, or, oh, do I have the person's resume? It's a more vital question than you think. Tell us a little bit about yourself in a way that okay, tune in to what matters. But Courtney's right. You can't. It's invasive. You can't initiate certain directions or whatever.
Or questions, yeah.
Heck, they can say whatever they like.
Absolutely, that's true. And there's a difference between interviewing versus having a conversation with an employee. And so when you go through an interview process, you need to make sure that you're asking legally sound questions. And for example, you can't say, well, do you have any kids? You can't say that.
Right.
So I always say, what's the question behind the question? It's not really, do they have kids? You're worried about them being able to come to work, right? And so the question behind the question for me is, our office hours are from 8 to 5. We have an hour for lunch. Is there anything right now that you, Monday through Friday, is there anything right now that you see preventing you from being able to be at work at those times, right? And so because that's what I care about. I may, I had a situation where I didn't have kids, but I had a grandmother that I was taking care of who, so if you would have said to me, do you have kids, which is an illegal question, and I would have said no, that didn't account for, but I may have to miss work because my grandmother's sick, right? And so what you want to do is you want to say, is there anything that's preventing you from coming to work during those hours, right? And and ask those legally sound questions to make sure that you're getting the right information. So when you want to ask a question and you think it might be illegal, think about, why am I wanting to ask that question? What is it that's driving my motivation to ask that question? How can I reword it? And I'm sure that you've got some resources for interview questions, but certainly, I work with people all the time on, hey, I want to ask this question, but I'm not sure how, right? And so it's okay,
Well,
but let's talk about really what you're trying to find out.
Yeah, Courtney, I played dirty pool when I was interviewed for this job that I have with Larimer County now. Because when I interviewed, I volunteered this bit of information. I said to the interview group, I said, yes, I do not have any life encumbrances that prevent me from being your most reliable, punctual person. I was speaking in code.
Yep.
Most of my coworkers are raising families. Little Johnny and Susie get the sniffles and they don't come to work, right? Because they're not me. And so I was speaking in code. They understood the code. Okay, I'm showing up every day. Hell, I have so many sick hours built up. I need to get sick. Well, knock on wood.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
No,
let it not be that. But I need to have some mental health days.
Right. But Daniel, you were asking something about being concerned about asking questions, and as Mike said, you don't want to say, what church do you go to? No, but you certainly want to be an active listener, because when you're listening to what those employees are saying to you, and they're telling you, I've got a son in theater. I love going to theater. I love live theater, musicals. I think musicals are great. Then when you're thinking of little things you could do to motivate me, then maybe it's tickets to the theater. Or maybe it's, hey, I saw your son was in a show. What do you think? I was at that show and he was in that show. Could you get his autograph for me? I mean, asking a parent for a kid's, how fun is that, right? And so all of those things that you can do when you're listening to that person and hearing what their interests are and hearing where they want to, what they want to do and what they do in their spare time is so important to build that trust relationship with them, to fill up the trust bank, I call it, and to build that relationship with them so that when you have to have the hard conversations, you've got that trust built up.
I remember my friend Ziggy, crew chief on a fiber optic construction crew chief, which meant that, sometimes when you hear there's some workers in your neighborhood and somebody gets to choose what music selection they might be listening to, Ziggy's choice was all political talk radio. But because I knew Ziggy, he and I did not agree about things, but one of my responsibilities related. And every time that I had or an elected official to our company or whatever, on Ziggy to be my best supporting actor, and it cost me I just politics and knew he loved it. So, just having a radar set for what makes people tick. So, I know, I guess I beat that one to death.
All right, any more questions for Courtney or Mike? Well, again, thank you so much to our speakers. Thanks to Amanda. Mike, please extend our thanks. She had to log off early. We, as in the Wine Board and Cave, are always looking for topics for webinars like this, or shorter hour-long sessions. We're currently working on a series of website design, website strategies that are probably going to take the form of multiple 1 hour long sessions. I know Cassidy or Kyle, do you want to chime in about those? We don't have dates, so it's hard to.
Yeah, Kyle, feel free to jump in as well. We're looking to book these out for the next several months, like Doug had said, on everything from marketing and branding, social media and website design. And instead of doing a longer half-day seminar like this, we thought it would be nicer to break those up for an hour and a half sessions between probably the end of this month into March, April, and May. So look forward to dates and some more information forthcoming on those.
And also we look to you for suggestions. Cassidy just sent out the survey, the follow-up survey to Vinco. Hopefully if you had some ideas, you included them there, or if you have other ideas or topics or speakers you'd like to hear from, please email any one of us. Daniel has one more question, it looks like.
Okay, yes. So I've had this rolling around in my head of how to work what seems to be the old-fashioned sentiment of a business practice being un-American. That you can make some rules that for things, you're a private business, but conforming your practices only to American law used to be a virtue. Is that on its way out? Is there a better way to say it? So like at the end of Mike's talk, there was a slide on your employees being ambassadors in the rest of their life. And I personally don't want to be hands off. Like, well, you can do whatever you want. And hopefully it doesn't come back on me, but I don't. If people were reasonable, it wouldn't come back on me. And so then I wouldn't have to care. Any thoughts on, clear as mud there.
I'll take a crack at it. Mike, unless you've got something that's bouncing off your head right now that you'd like to say, I'll take a crack at it. From an employment standpoint, you have to follow the employment laws that are given to us to follow based on federal law, state law, and local laws. And so we have to follow those rules based on your industry, your size of business, those types of things. So you've got to follow those rules. But from there, you can decide the practices, the best practices that happen within your organization. And you can actually say, this is what I want you to wear. This is how I want you to handle customer service. This is how I want you to represent our company. This is those kinds of things. And then, excuse me, operational protocols. Okay, when we get a new customer, these are the protocols that we follow to set them up, to onboard them. And this is so you can do those types of things. So I'm not sure if that really answers your total question, but you do have the flexibility, if you will, to make some of those everyday day-to-day operations and the roles and responsibilities, and even your expectations of what you expect of that employee. That's up to you as the business owner within the constructs of the laws that are continuing to be rolled out. And I think that we're going to see some more this year. So I would say that you do have flexibility, but you still have to follow the laws.
To Daniel and everyone, I will mention this, that Courtney has it right on the money, that sure, there are going to be rules and regs. Yep, that's the way it goes. But last I checked, Courtney is exactly right, that the norms and the the things about your organization, you still have all the control, if you will, of how your company is represented. You got to say so. In the onboarding, in the onboarding section of that curriculum that I told you about, because I can do a greatest hits version of it, by the way, Cassidy, in under an hour. The onboarding part includes in your onboarding, instead of just dealing with the paperwork, declare what the norms are of the company and be honest about them. That here's who we are, here's what we're about. Don't fake it. And social media, if you don't have, because currently until they legislate the social media companies, you are within your rights right now, as of this moment, to say to your employees, here's what our social media policy is. You will not speak ill of the company or any of our customers, but if you don't say it, then it's, it's not a defense if they don't know what your intentions are. So declare them. These are our rules of the road here at this company. You're either in or you're not. Am I way off base, Courtney? Is that going too far?
No, the only thing you've got to be careful of is social media, and there's a lot of nuance with social media, and you just have to be careful not to take away their rights to discuss the management of the organization with their with coworkers. So there's some precedent-setting law regarding somebody posting, "My manager's a jerk, and here's where I work." And that was posted on social media, and that person was fired. And through the National Labor Relations Act, that was considered concerted activity. And so the company got in trouble for that. So there's some nuance on what you can say, but Mike is absolutely, you need to be spelling out your expectations in that orientation. You need to be telling them what you expect from them, and what are the tenets that your company follows. What do they live by, and make sure that they understand that. I would even say start that in the interview process. Start talking about expectations and the history of the company and what the tenets of the company are and all those things throughout the interviewing process, so that when they get to the new orientation, the new employee orientation, it's not new to them. And they know what it is. I'm sorry. Yeah, so just continue to talk about those expectations and make sure that they're known to them throughout their career. That makes discipline much more easier, coaching much more easier, because you know that they know those expectations, and so you can have different types of conversations with them.
Yay.
Thank you.
And amen.
We're on the same wavelength, Mike, just you and me, man. We're just right there together.
The wonders of technology. You guys can sync up right here. Daniel, do you have any other questions, or does anybody else have any more questions? As we've mentioned, we are recording this, and it will be posted on the trade resources of coloradowine.com, and I think Cassidy's going to post a link as well. Give us until this afternoon, if not tomorrow morning, because it takes a while to process and download the file. But we will have it there and let you all know as soon as we do. Again, thank you, Courtney and Mike and Amanda. Really appreciate all your help. And if anybody thinks of more questions, please reach out to Cassidy or myself. Cassidy, anything else?
I think that's it. Thank you all again for attending, and Courtney and Mike, thank you for sharing this amazing insight with us today. I sent out a quick reminder email just a little bit ago for our CAVE members. If you guys have not responded yet, today's the deadline to sign up for our passport program. So please do so, or feel free to email me if you have any questions. And then a reminder, if you guys were able to join us for our VINCO conference, you have access to all of those recordings for the remainder of the month. So if you couldn't be at everywhere at the same time, or just want to circle back and review any of those recordings, you guys are able to do so. And again, reach out if you have any questions on how to access those or log in. We are here for you guys.
And Mike and Courtney just posted their emails in the chat, so thank you very much. That will also be included in the in the download. Thank you very much. We
Yeah.
appreciate it, and we will see you all soon.
Have a good one.
Please take care and stay safe.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Courtney, great to see you.
Great to see you, Mike.